Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to demonstrate how to do a combined constructions drawing. In particular, this is a sugar scoop that I'm going to design in 2D using a combination of constructions. On my paper, I see the workspace have a printed center line on the horizontal scale and then a vertical center line, as well as a point R at the bottom left for a starting point. On the right hand side, I see I have the text part of my question, the analytical text of the question, which tells me what to do. And underneath that, I have the schematic of the 2D drawing with all the dimensions that will help me to construct the drawing. And below that, we have a 3D preview of the sugar scoop that we want to design. On the left of that, we have a rubric or an assessment criteria with breakdown of the various aspects that will be assessed. And at the bottom, we have place for our school's name, the student's name and surname, and they can write the date in the title block as well. Good, so let's read the question quickly. It says, make use of a drawing of a sugar scoop provided and copy the drawing through constructions. Make use of a scale of 1 to 1. Start your drawing at point R. All constructions must be shown and no hidden detail needs to be shown, and the drawing must be neat and accurate, which is a prerequisite for all drawings, especially for any draftsman. Now, I want to just add a quick disclaimer here. There are different ways to draw this drawing. So some teachers will explain the drawing from the right, some will explain it from another angle, but I am using point R as a starting point, although it is possible to do this constructions drawing from various other angles. Good, so I'm going to start with my dimensions at point R, and I'm going to go back to my schematics drawing and I'm going to look at the 45 millimeters provided here. And that flows from point R. I also notice that I have an arc with a radius of 54 millimeters. So the 54 millimeters arc as well as the 45 millimeters distance has to have something to do with one another. And I can see that if I were to draw a light construction line now all the way up vertically to the middle center line of the sugar scoop, that will give me the second reference points for this arc of 54 millimeters. And that is where the 45 millimeters will help me. So going back to my drawing space, I'm going to go now and draw a vertical construction line that goes right through the center of point R and goes all the way up. Then 45 millimeters to the right of that construction line on the center line, because if I go back to my schematic drawing, it is from point R 45 millimeters to the right where I can get the secondary point for the arc, touch arc in particular, with a radius of 54 millimeters. Therefore, I'm going to go to the center line here and measure 45 millimeters to the right and draw a light construction arc. Now, I like to use the circle tool in TurboCAD to measure because it's accurate. Okay, so you do not have to do that. You can use the parallel tool, but I have found sometimes glitches in this version of TurboCAD where I do not always get the exact measurements. So the circle tool works perfect. So now I have on the middle center line 45 millimeters measured out. So what I want to do is draw another vertical line that goes through that point. And now I know that there is a reference point on the center line here. And I can delete this construction line that I've used. Well, it was actually more just a measuring tool. With the two reference points provided to me now, I can go and use the 45 millimeters for the radius of this arc and take my compass, place it at point R with a radius of 45 millimeters. And please notice I'm drawing a light construction circles. So I'm going to go and draw a radius of 54 millimeters from point R, because the touch arc has a radius of 54. Now notice that accidentally this arc goes very close to the center of that second reference point on the center line. Although that was not the intention, it just worked out that way. But do not now get confused and go and just draw from that intersection with the center line. You must zoom in and then draw exactly from the center point of that second reference point and measure with your compass, now still set to 54 millimeters, another light construction arc. Now these big circles are not necessary, although I have to show how I got to my answer, therefore I need to leave my constructions, but I'm allowed to take off the excess lines of my construction. So therefore I'm going to go and do some housekeeping and work like a proper draftsman and delete these excess arcs which doesn't serve any purpose. However, here where the two arcs meet one another, I have now a significant reference point. So I'm going to go and place another dot there at that intersection of those two arcs. That will now form the center point for this arc in my schematic with the radius of 54 millimeters. Now I'm going to label that center point because all arcs have a center point, the same as with circles, and therefore I need to label that center point, and I'm just going to call it 01 for now. Good. So with that reference point, I'm going to take my compass, place it now at that intersection, make sure that you zoom in and snap properly to the center of that dot, and if I worked accurately and my measurements are accurately, if I were to snap to the center point, I would see that the radius of that arc is 54 millimeters. So therefore I'm going to snap to that point and I'm checking, and that circle has a radius of 54 millimeters. But I want this part of the sugar scoop to be solid because it forms part of the answer that I need to show. So this arc here of 54 millimeters has to be solid. So I could have drawn this arc solid from the get-go, or I can now go and draw an arc on that construction with a radius of 54 millimeters. Now I need to change the layer to a solids layer, and I have named it answers layer, and I've created its properties beforehand. And if I go now to the center of that and go to the top reference point, click on it once, I can go and draw in that arc now with a radius of 54 millimeters. So I would just want to do that again because it didn't snap where it's supposed to. Let's zoom back into the center, click on it, and draw that solid arc to point R. There we go. Now this arc that is underneath that I can do away with because that doesn't form part of the construction. All I must leave is this construction here. Good. Now what I need to do is draw the same horizontal line that I see here at point R going to the right. And I'm going to just use the constructions tool and draw that solid or that light construction line all the way to the right. Now I'm using the construction tool here in TurboCAD, and that forms basically like a watermark on the background of my page. When I print this page with my answer on it, those lines won't show. Only the line tool options will print. So therefore I need to actually use the line tool and draw with that. These construction line tools that I use will not print unless I specifically select it to print. But we do not do that. Good. So what I want to do is look at what is the base length of the sugar scoop. So I see that it was the 45 and then another 75 all the way to this vertical right hand edge of the sugar scoop. So if I were to go now and measure from the 45 that I've already determined, another 75 to the right, I should reach the end of the sugar scoop. So I'm going to go back to my construction and place the circle tool on that intersection there, which is the base, the same as what we have here. Now I see I have the wrong layer, so I'm going to go and change the layer to the answers constructions layer. You can call it whatever you like. I have just used that. So from this center point here, or this reference point, I'm going to measure 75 millimeters to the right. Now I can go and use my vertical construction tool once more and draw a light construction line straight up from that reference point. And that will give me then this right hand side of the sugar scoop, and that's before the handle. With that done, I am going to look at any other measurements that will help me with the drawing. But my paper is cluttered, so we need to do housekeeping. I'm going to select that measuring tool, delete it, and now I must see how high is this sugar scoop. And I can see here on my schematic drawing that in fact the sugar scoop has a height, or you can say a diameter, of 60 millimeters, because we know from the 3D preview that this is actually a round hollow object. Good, so with that 60 millimeters there, I know I can go back to any of these vertical lines of mine and measure then using a measuring tool 60 millimeters straight up from the base, and I can just draw a light construction line to show that measurement, and I'm going to use the horizontal construction tool to draw the height of the sugar scoop there. Now I can delete the dimensions tool, and I have a very nice layout of the height and the length of the sugar scoop. Good, so with that in mind, I say to myself, okay, there was the 45 at the bottom and then a 75, but now there's an arc here, so it's not a straight edged corner, it's a round corner here. So I must look for information because there's no radius indicated here, but at the top I see there's a similar arc and it has a radius of 15. So the rule by thumb is that if you look at a drawing and there are some measurements not provided, then you must look for similar shapes within that drawing and apply the radius with those measurements that you need to apply in the drawings, corners that look the same, and wherever you know it will be applicable. Good. So what I want to do is I will take this 15 millimeters radius that I have at the top and I will apply it to the bottom of the curve here as well. So if I were to take the 75 millimeters, I can now deduct that 15 and I will end up with 60 millimeters. Or we can just do the other obvious thing is work 15 millimeters backwards with our measurement. So therefore on the base I'm going to go and use my measuring tool, say 15 millimeters, and I'm going to go and draw a light construction line now that is going to go vertically straight up from that 15 millimeters that I've just measured. So delete the measuring tool, and now we have more or less all the dimensions that we need there. Except that we see here at the top we have from the back end of the scoop another 35 millimeters to where the second arc of the sugar scoop meets, and that sugar scoop's arc is 50 millimeters to the top, and then we have 35 millimeters from there to the far right hand side of the scoop. So what I want to do is I already measured now the 15 millimeters for this arc here. So I can just go and measure 20 millimeters further to the left on my drawing. So from here I'm going to go and draw 15 millimeters. Pardon me, I'm just going to measure 20 millimeters. It's the 35 minus the 15. So that's going to give me 20 millimeters to my left. And once again, we just go and draw a vertical center line to show that measurement, and we're going to delete the dimension tool. Good. So now I can draw my drawing up to a certain point. So from here, I know that the base of my sugar scoop will go all the way straight to there with that 15 millimeters that curves. So I know that it's going to be 60 millimeters up to here. So I know on the base here, I can draw a solid line which I will select my answers layer for. It's set up to be a solid line, so I'm going to draw a solid line all the way up to there. So it will have the 45 millimeters up to here, and then 60 millimeters up to there, and then it will curve. Good. So what else can we do? Well, we can see that here at the top we have that 35 millimeters from the far right to the left, and we can also now identify that part here. So that means that here is the far right part of the scoop, and then we have the 15 millimeter gap for the curve, and then another remaining 20 millimeters. So that solid line that I just drew is 20 millimeters at the top of my sugar scoop, which is from here to here, and then it will curve. Good. So what do we do now? We have a choice. We can either draw this arc with a radius of 50 millimeters, or we can draw these arcs with a radius of 15. Well, I like to get this part of my drawing done first, so I'm going to go and draw the radius of 50 millimeters first. And in order to determine that arc, I need to, once again, first establish the two reference points. So we know here where that 35 millimeters reached, we have one reference point, and we already have this reference point here on the middle line where our arc of 54 millimeters met on the center line. So what we want to do is we're going to use those two reference points. I'm going to use my compass, place it on either one of the reference points. I'm just going to start with this one. Make sure it's a constructions line that I'm going to draw, and I'm going to draw a circle, construction circle with a radius of 50 millimeters from that reference point. Then I'm going to do the same now from this end, and accidentally, as you see, it also ends up on the same point, but I am still going to do the right thing and going to draw an arc of 50 millimeters from there, and now I have an intersection here at the top left. Once again, we want to do housekeeping, so I'm going to delete the excess lines of my construction to keep my drawing as neat and tidy as possible. Delete the excess lines that I don't need, and now I've got another center point here for the touch arc that is going to curve in here. So what I need to do is again place a reference point at that intersection, and we will label that as O2 because it's the second center point for the arc that we're going to draw. And then from there we know that if we look at our schematic drawing, that is an arc with a radius of 50 millimeters. That's why we used a radius of 50 millimeters from both reference points of that arc. And I'm going to draw in a solid arc now from there. So I'm going to select my answers layer, which is solid, go to the center point O2, stretch it now to either one of the two reference points. If you look closely, you'll see they will line up perfectly. Draw it, and now I've got this big circle that I don't need. Again, I just go and grab my split entities tool to cut off that on the two ends of the arc, like that. Select the selector tool and delete the part of the circle that I do not need. Now we have the exact curve for the sugar scoop, as you can see here. All that remains is that we now add the curves, the vertical part of the back end of the scoop and the curve at the bottom. So we know that the curve has a radius of 15 millimeters at the top as well as at the bottom. And then we just have a straight line connecting those curves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now determine the center point of this curve first. Okay, because I know it will end there. I don't have a reference point there yet, so I need to find the center point, and I need to create a reference point over here. And that I know will be 15 millimeters lower from the top of my sugar scoop. At the bottom, it will be also 15 millimeters upwards to where the curve ends. And we already have determined that it went 15 millimeters inwards. Therefore, on my drawing, I'm going to go now and measure 15 millimeters. I'm going to select the constructions layer, and from the back end's top corner, I'm going to go and measure a radius of 15 millimeters, because that is the radius of the arc. And also from the bottom, I'm going to go and measure a radius of 15 millimeters. These are just construction lines, just to measure. And then I'm going to draw a light construction line horizontally, and at the top I will do the same. Now what I have determined is the center of the curve of my sugar scoop at the top as well as at the bottom. But as I said, when I print out this paper, these light construction lines, which I also refer to as watermark lines, will not print. Therefore, I need to show those lines using an actual line, and I'm going to go and select the constructions layer. From the 15 millimeters measurements, I'm going to draw in a straight line from the 2 points of the arc start and end at the top and at the bottom. And then I can delete these 2 measuring circles that I've used, and now I can also go and label the intersection there and the intersection there. Now this looks a little bit cluttered. I've got all these watermark lines in the background, and they are bothering me at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to erase some of them. So I'm going to go edit clear constructions, and I'm going to delete those that are in my way. So I'm going to do that one, this one. I can even delete those up to there. Good. So now I can see clearer what constructions I've drawn in. So these constructions that I've drawn in shows that from the back end of my sugar scoop, I have measured 15 millimeters inward, 15 millimeters down, 15 millimeters inward, 15 millimeters up. This will give me those 2 center points for the sugar scoop's top and bottom round edge. So what I'm going to do is label them first, because I'm going to use them now and place my compass at each one alternatively. That will I call a 03, and then I'm going to go and label this one 04. Now on a normal drawing page, you will not have these dots and labels on the left hand margin. I just place them there for the tutorial's sake, so it's easier just to copy and drag the reference points instead of creating them every time, which will consume a lot of time. Good, so now I've got center point 03 and 04 there. I'm going to take my compass, and I'm going to go and select the solids layer, the answers layer, and I'm going to go to 03, zoom in properly, and snap to the center of that dot. And now if I measured accurately, the radius of this arc will be 15 millimeters, as we have seen here on the schematic drawing. So let's go and check that, snap to it. Yes, it's 15 millimeters. Place that circle. We can place the other one immediately from that center point, stretch it and snap it. 15 millimeters, and then I'm going to go and do some housekeeping, because the arc only goes up to here and up to there. Same with the top circle or arc, we have it only up to there and there. And I'm going to go and delete the excess parts of the circle. Now obviously, as I've said before, on paper you will not draw these full solid circles, because it's going to smudge your paper. If you draw, you only need to draw the part of the arc that you need, but on TurboCAD I use the full circle and just delete it after. Good, now I'm going to go and end this open end of my sugar scoop's front part, and I'm going to make sure I'm drawing on the solids layer, which is the answers layer, snap to that end of the arc and bring it down to the other arc. And now I've completed that first section of my construction. Good, so the next part we see is where we have the handle of the sugar scoop. Now this part here is just a ring. It can be a copper ring, it can be metal. whatever, it can even be wood. So that is, it looks like a rectangle, but in fact it is a rounded surface. So I must just go and check. I see that the height of that is 10 millimeters. I see the diameter of it is 20 millimeters. Therefore, I must go and measure 10 millimeters from the center up and 10 millimeters from the center down. That will give me the 10 millimeters for the diameter of this circle here, or ring, that will hold the handle to the scoop, as well as determine the height of 10 millimeters then for that. Good, so let's do the diameter of the sugar scoop's ring first, and I'm going to use the circle tool. I'm going to go and just use the constructions layer and measure then from the center 10 millimeters up and 10 millimeters down. In total, it will give me the diameter of 20 of the ring for that handle. And I also now have seen that from the center here to the top it's 10, from the center to the bottom it's 10, but I've seen that the height of the ring must be 10 millimeters as well, and that accidentally now works out perfectly by just drawing that one circle. So let's look at it again. So from here to there would have been 10 millimeters up and down, which gives us 20, and then obviously it gives me the 10 that I see that I need here as well. Good for the height of my ring. To do the rest now is just to go and draw construction lines. So I'm going to go and grab these vertical construction lines, and I'm drawing a light construction line there. And I also want to draw a horizontal center line to show the distance from there to there. And now that ring part has shaped itself by using just plain simple logic. Good. So what I want to do now is select the line tool, make sure my layer is on the solids layer, and then I just draw in the ring section of the sugar scoop. And there we go, 3 lines and our ring is done. Now we need to look at the last part, which is this rounded surface of the handle. Now again, with all arcs, as we have mentioned before, you just need 2 reference points. Once you have the 2 reference points, you can determine any arc. So I know that on this corner of my ring at the top, I have 1 reference point, and then there's a reference point here at the vertical center line, and I just need to determine that. But I noticed that there is this rounded arc at the very end of the handle, which has a radius of 15 millimeters. That means from here upwards to that reference point will then also obviously be 15 millimeters, as well as from the center downwards it will be 15 millimeters. That will give my second reference point for the arc here at the top, as well as the arc at the bottom, because we already have the reference point on the left, the top and bottom. Good, so we also need to know what is the radius of this arc, and we notice that the touch arc has a radius of 25 millimeters. Again, only the one arc's measurement is shown, and therefore we know the dimension of the other one, which is similar, will also be 25 millimeters. Going back to our drawing, we are firstly going to determine this height of 15 millimeters. We can even draw this arc with the radius of 15 millimeters. So let's do that, because it will already answer the question for us on the right hand side. So I'm going to go to my circles tool, select the circle. I could also use just my arc tool on TurboCAD and just make sure that I have selected the answers layer, which is the solids layer. Go to that center point. Now we still need to label that center point. We will do so just now. So I'm going to go to that center point here, which is the one that we need to measure 15 millimeters in radius, and draw our arc. Now I can just delete the part of the circle that I don't need, and then we know we have 2 reference points for the 2 arcs on our schematic that we require. So I also see that if I zoom in properly, that there's a solid line here right at the edge. So I must not forget to fill in that solid line over there. So while we're busy with this drawing here, let's go and fill in that solid line from there. And the total length of that line then should be 30 millimeters. And yes, it is 30 millimeters. Now all that remains for us is to do the final construction of the arc here, and therefore we need to know that we need to determine the center point for this arc, and we need to determine the center point for this arc, because in all our construction drawings we need to determine the center point of all arcs. So what I do is I go back to my drawing, I select my circle tool, which will be your compass on paper. Going to go to the constructions layer. Then I'm going to start here from the one reference point of the ring, and I just double check and make sure that the radius that I need to use is 25 millimeters from that reference point and that one, as well as the other two. And then I go and draw a light construction arc with a radius of 25 millimeters from the ring, as well as from that reference point there, tab 25. And I can quickly do some housekeeping before I go along, because otherwise it gets very cluttered on my paper, and I want you to understand what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go and erase those construction lines. And while I'm at it, let's just clean these other construction lines that I also don't need anymore. Let's use to clear that one, and we can even clear those. Okay. Good, so now at the top I have my intersection, which will give me the center point for this arc that will run with a radius of 25 millimeters. And as if we're done with all the other center points, we're going to place a dot as a reference point for it. I want to also label it, so let's grab a label 05 and go and place it there. And now I can take my compass, place it on point 05 using the solids layer, and zoom into the exact intersection, stretch my arc either side to this reference point or that one, wouldn't matter. If you worked accurately, they work out perfectly. And then when I made sure that I snapped to that intersection there, I draw the arc, and on CAD I can just go and delete the part of the circle that I don't want. Use the selector tool, select the area or the part that you don't want, and press delete. There we have a perfect curve with the right dimension. Now I think you get the picture. Isn't this wonderful? Now we can go and we do the exact same construction now at the bottom. Again, using our constructions arcs first from this intersection point, and I'm going to draw an arc with a radius of 25, because that's the radius of the main touch arc that we need to draw. Again, from the other reference point, 25 millimeters. Then we're going to declutter our page and erase all the excess arcs and select them, delete, select, delete. Now again we have an intersection right there. Now please ignore these watermark lines at the background. I can even go and delete them now as well. I could have done so previously. Let's just get rid of those to make our drawing proper and less cluttered. Okay, let's just look at it for the moment. There's one there at the far right. Okay, perfect. Now I only see what I need. Zoom back in. Now again, we need to reference that point there. And I'm going to go and grab a dot. Place it on the intersection of the construction at the bottom. I've run out of numbers, so I'm going to just go select one, copy and paste. And I'm going to change that 05 now to 06. Go and place it, double click on it. And I'm going to quickly change that to 6 and say okay. Now we've got our 6 center point. Now almost done. We just take our compass once again, select the solids layer, and from 06 we're going to place our compass right at that dot, stretch it to either that intersection or the other one, does not matter, and we draw the arc. And as I said, this is a solid arc because it forms part of our answer, and we erase the excess. Now please remember, as I've said before, on paper you will not draw the full arc solid because it will smudge your paper when you erase. But on CAD, life is easy. So there we go. We have completed all the required constructions for this combined constructions drawing of a sugar scoop. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe and happy drawing. Thank you very much.